In the spring of 1981, a remote cabin in the woods outside the small California town of Keddie became one of the most brutal unsolved crimes in the state's history. Cabin 28 was supposed to be a quiet retreat, a place for family and friends to relax. But on a cold April night, something went horribly wrong. Inside, investigators found 4 people brutally murdered who were being tied up, beaten, and stabbed. What made this horror even stranger was the 2 children who were left alive, who were found nearby the crime scene. They had slept through the whole entire attack. Nothing was forced, there was no signs of a break-in, the phone lines were cut before the attack, and despite there being suspects and theories, including possible cult links and local grudges, no one has ever been convicted. The missing child had never been found because there was a child as well as the other 2 who were found alive. There was a missing child as well, and that child had never been found. And the crime scene was poorly handled by authorities, and decades later, the case remains open. On October 8th, 2009, Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson and their 6-year-old daughter Madison left their home in Oklahoma. They were considering buying land in the remote Sans Bois Mountains, a sparsely populated wilderness area. Then, unfortunately, days later, their pickup truck was found abandoned on a dirt road near the mountains. Inside were the family's wallets, IDs, phones, and a GPS, and they were all untouched. There was also $32,000 in cash still stacked neatly inside the car, and their beloved dog was there and barely alive. Nothing about this scene made sense. Why leave behind their essentials? Why go on foot into rugged terrain with a young child? Why abandon a vehicle that was fully functional? For 4 years they were missing. Then in November 2013, hunters stumbled across skeletal remains in the woods about 3 miles from their abandoned truck. Dental records and DNA later confirmed the bones were indeed Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison, but investigators still couldn't determine how they died. The dog's survival without his family only added to the mystery. There was no signs of foul play, no clear explanation, just an empty vehicle and questions without answers. This has to be one of the most bizarrest cases, because if you were going to go on foot into the woods, why would you leave your $32,000 in cash? And even if someone did take them, they would take the cash as well, you would think. But their wallets, their IDs, their phones, and their GPSs were still all in their car untouched, which is frankly so bizarre. It is absolutely bizarre. Long before smartphones, before detailed GPS maps, a cold night in February 1978 set the stage for one of the most baffling disappearances in the US history. They were men locally known as the Boys, were original guys who loved sports, routine, and each other's company. On February 24th, they drove about 50 miles north to watch a college basketball game. After the game, they stopped for snacks like any friend group would. They got candy, they got drinks, and they just had a good time. But what should have been a short drive home turned very, very dark. Their car was later found abandoned on a snowy mountain road in Plumas National Forest, far off the way that they should have gone. But their engines were still fine, and there was no signs of a struggle, just a lone car in the deep cold. Searchers turned up nothing at first, but months later as the snow melted, what emerged only deepened the mystery. A US Forest Service trailer that was 20 miles from their vehicle with supplies inside that should have kept them alive was untouched. No one had got inside of it, no one had eaten any of the food that was in there, it was just completely empty and unused. But then they discovered the body of one man from the group. That was Ted Weir. He was inside the trailer. He was starved to death despite being food, drink, and heat all inside the trailer. 3 other bodies were found as well in the woods. They were scattered everywhere, far from the trailer. And also there was no trace of the 5th man, that was Gary Mathias. He was never ever found. What's chilling is not just the way they died, but how, with life-saving resources that were inside of this cabin, this trailer, but had been untouched. There was food everywhere. Inside this trailer there was just food. They could have survived off of this, but they didn't. One man was found inside the trailer starving though, even though the food was there. It's so bizarre, and everyone else was scattered around the forest miles away from the trailer, and then the fifth guy was still never found. It's totally bizarre. But anyway, if you did enjoy this content today, if you do like this content, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to put a comment of what case you would like me to do next. And if there is anything else you would like me to do, then just say it. But other than that, thank you for watching this video. I'll see you on the next one.